Welcome back to Common Command, your YouTube hub for all things EDH and so much more. This episode is brought to you by viewers like you. If you'd like to help support the channel, consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel with bell notifications on so you don't miss out on any uploads. You can also support us by visiting our TCG Player affiliate link when purchasing any product off the site. Lastly, you can support us directly over on Patreon to help fund future projects as you cash in on some amazing benefits. If you'd like to interact with the Common Command team, follow the link in the description to join our brand new Discord server. Now enjoy the rest of the video. I never realized how much of a black player I was until I noticed how many of my decks had graveyard recursion themes. But playing with your graveyard is just too strong. It essentially gives you a second hand to re-cash in on great value. And that's why Araumi of the Dead Tide is quite popular right now. For one generic in Dimir, you get a 1/4 Merfolk Wizard that can tap to exile cards from your graveyard equal to the number of opponents you have to give a creature in your graveyard Encore. Encore basically lets you recast creatures from your graveyard, except you exile the card and make a token copy of that creature for each opponent you have. This effect is very strong with creatures that have ETBs, as we'll be getting more than what we pay for. So let's see just how much value we can put onto the field with our Dimir Reanimator build. Just like any game of EDH, we're going to start off with some ramp. You should know by now that Myriad Landscape and Temple of the False God are perfect land-based ramp cards for any deck that isn't green. Myriad Landscape can slowly get us 2 basics from our deck, while Temple can straight up tap for 2 mana as long as we have 4 other lands. Solemn Simulacrum is another oldie but goodie that fits really well into the deck's theme. Its ETB gets us a basic from our deck, and when it dies it draws us a card, 2 abilities we can take advantage of throughout the course of the game. But we've got more interesting forms of ramp with Soldevi Adnate. Its tap ability requires that we sacrifice a creature, but in return we get black mana equal to the sacked creature's CMC. Dreamscape Artist also has a tap ability that helps our deck in almost every category. If we tap it, discard a card, and sacrifice a land, we get to search our library for 2 basics and put them into play untapped. Although the discarding and sacking may seem as a setback, it actually fills our graveyard with needed cards for our commander. Heartless Summoning is an enchantment for 1 and a black that makes our creatures cost 2 generic mana less, and this does count towards abilities such as Encore. It does give our creatures -1/-1, but the cost reduction is well worth it. Pitiless Plunder will get us a treasure whenever our creatures die, and Wafer's Bauble will search us up a land to the field. Lastly, we're running a couple of rocks with Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, Fellwar Stone, Thought Vessel, and Talisman of Dominance. Now with the ramp out of the way, let's see how we'll be drawing cards. Let's start the draw strong with a Windfall. It makes everyone discard their hands and draw equal to the greatest number of cards discarded, not only setting everyone even with cards, but it fills our graveyard as well. Ancient Excavation also fills both our hand and graveyard. For 4 mana, we draw cards equal to the number of cards in our hand and then discard that many. We essentially choose the best cards we see and then put specific cards to our bin. Village Rites can draw us 2 cards for 1 mana as long as we have a creature to sacrifice, and Monastery Siege can draw us an extra card on our upkeep. We do have to discard a card when we draw that extra card from the siege, yet this can be an upside as we need cards in our graveyard in order to activate our commander's ability. Grim Haruspex and Smothering Abomination work similarly, as they will draw us a card every time a creature dies or is sacrificed. And last up, we have Phyrexian Arena that draws us an extra card each turn for 1 life. Now in order to be a Reanimator deck, we're going to need more cards in our graveyard. Buried Alive will tutor us up 3 creatures to put into our graveyard, while Court of Cunning will mill any number of players on our upkeep. It also makes us the Monarch when it enters, so extra bonus for that. Altar of Dementia fills our yard as we sacrifice creatures to it, but it can also be an alternate win condition by milling our opponents. Perpetual Timepiece will conservatively mill us for 2, but also has the ability to take specific cards out of our graveyard and put them back into our deck. Tunnel Visions is probably my favorite filler card from the group though. We cast it for 6 and name a card. We then mill ourselves until we reveal the named card. Since we're running Living Death in the deck, we simply name Living Death and see just how many creatures we can hit. But since we're on the topic of graveyard recursion, the deck is also running Victimize, Reanimate, and Animate Dead to cheat creatures back into play. Command the Dread Horde is another big hitter that'll cost us some life but let us choose as many creatures as we can afford. The deck also has some sack outlets to help get any creatures in play back into our graveyard. Ashnod's Altar will get us 2 generic mana for sacrificing a creature, while Viscera Seer will let us scry 1. Carrion Feeder will get huge with +1/+1 counters, Spawning Pit can make us some tokens, and Sadistic Hypnotist will force our opponents to discard cards. As we sacrifice creatures, Blood Artist, Zulaport Cutthroat, Bastion of Remembrance, and Sir Conrad the Grim will all drain our opponents. Now before we get into the valued creatures, we have a few support cards to help the consistency of the deck. Sundial of the Infinite will end the turn, allowing us to keep the created tokens from our commander's ability. Rings of Brightheart, now super cheap from the reprint, will let us copy our commander's ability, while Ayara First of Locthwain is another way to drain our opponents. Elixir of Immortality is a perfect graveyard protector that will let us put any number of cards from our graveyard back into our library and gain us some life along the way. But now it's time to see which creatures are going to help close out the game. Demon's Disciple and Playcrafter will keep our opponent's board and hands in control as they make them sacrifice creatures and discard cards. Rakshasa Debaser will help return creatures to the field, and Gonti Lord of Luxury will let us play with our opponent's libraries. Grave Titan is a thick giant that'll make us some zombie tokens, and Corpse Connoisseur will put more creatures into our graveyard. Impaler Shriek and Broodbirth Viper can draw us a ton of cards when they hit our opponents, especially since we'll be making multiple of them. Noxious Gearhulk will take out any creatures we don't like, along with Cavalier of Night, who can also return us a creature with 3 CMC or less to the battlefield upon death. Phyllis Broker of Blood is just an all-value card drawing demon that'll surely get in for some big hits, and Abhorrent Overlord can generate us a ton of tokens. Clackbridge Troll is another great value creature that's either going to hit hard or fill up our hands. Cloud of Fairies can net us a ton of mana if we target it with our commander's Encore ability, while Sheoldred Whispering One will reanimate our creatures as it makes our opponents sacrifice theirs. Last up, we have our game enders with Massacre Worm, Kakusho the Evening Star, and Grey Merchant of Asphodel. If we're able to make multiples of these creatures, our opponent's life is going to take a big hit. The last few cards we're running are Interaction Package. Now we don't need a ton because a lot of the creatures in the deck already are helping in this category, but we're still running Arcane Denial, Reality Shift, and Negate to protect our own spells. Crux of Fate and Decree of Pain are backup board wipes to clear the board when things get out of control. But with that, the deck is complete. Let me know how you like the deck in the comment section below. What cards would you add or replace to help make the deck your own? If you'd like to see a complete deck list including lands, visit the TCG player link found in the description below. Dimir is a really fun color pairing, and it's always fun getting to bring back multiples of your creatures, especially if they have some strong ETB effects. If you enjoy graveyard decks, then Araumi is the commander for you. Remember, if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a like and subscribe to Common Command for more EDH content.